You're an idiot. You're stupid. You're worthless. How many of you ever heard the power of negative words like that before? Raise your hand. I appreciate you. I value who you are. You're a great person. How many of you have ever heard the power of positive words like that before? Ladies and gentlemen, we've just established the power of words and the fact that it stays with you a long time after you hear them. They can either empower you or they will inhibit you. Now, I have another question. How many of you have been in prison before? Raise your hand. Now, for this, I have to raise my hand and keep it raised because I was in prison for 6 years, and 4 of those years was in solitary confinement. So I know all about the power of negative words, but it would be in prison where I would learn about the power of positive words. And from an unlikely source, my fellow prisoners. And it was because of their positive words and positive encouragement that I decided to redefine myself and recreate myself to become the man that I am in front of you today. And because they believed in me and supported me, I went on to earn 3 college degrees, working on a 4th. And I've been working with youth at risk now for at least 20 years. And it was during a professional development session that I learned about a new treatment modality where the power of words was used to treat victims of trauma. And that was called trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care is a treatment philosophy that focuses and understands and recognizes that there's all types of trauma, and this trauma starts with words and is exacerbated by experiences. Being informed means being able to understand is that words will either re-trigger or empower. Now, the gentleman that sort of mentored me in prison, I'm pretty sure they didn't go to a trauma-informed care training, but they knew if they encouraged me, if they supported me, that I might not end up like them. And some of those men had life sentences. Right now, across America, there is a youngster in a classroom that is being identified as being unruly, not focusing, not paying attention, and all those other clinical terms that basically says, I don't want this kid in my classroom. And the way that this teacher decides to communicate with this youngster will either empower or inhibit. That teacher can go to that child and say, you know what? I've been noticing you haven't been focusing. So what I'm gonna do with you is I'm gonna have you tomorrow morning when you come in, I'm gonna have your desk right up here next to mine. And I gotta be honest with you, this happened to me when I was in elementary school. And for me, it was awful. I felt ostracized, I felt singled out, and quite frankly, pissed off. And it showed in the way that I worked with that teacher throughout the year. Now, let's imagine an informed teacher that instead recognizes the fact that Jeff is an anxious child. When you notice that he's off task, give him something to do with his hands. If you notice he's not paying attention, give him small tasks to complete so he learns small successes. Oh, and by the way, he is the 5th child of 6 children in a 3-bedroom duplex. And while his parents don't have much, they do try to support him as much as possible. So when you find that he's doing wrong and you send a letter home with him, try to catch him when he's doing good. Being informed makes all the difference. Right now across the United States, there's a youngster getting arrested. And how that police officer decides to deal with that youth will determine whether or not that youth is empowered or inhibited. That police officer can tell that youngster, hey, if you keep doing this, you're gonna end up in prison, jail shot, et cetera, et cetera. We know how that goes. Now, let's imagine an informed police officer that connects actions to thoughts, thoughts to feelings. And what happens then is that they develop a relationship. a relationship that could be the difference between whether or not, if he's ever arrested again, whether or not he pulls over or engages in a high-speed chase. And I think we can all agree that in our society, in our community right now, some would argue and say that car thefts are at an epidemic rate. So being informed makes it better for everybody and makes it better for our community. I can remember working in a juvenile justice program, and I can remember walking on a unit and telling the youngster, hey, happy birthday. Not realizing that when I said happy birthday, it would trigger him. He became so violent and aggressive that we ended up having to restrain him. See, what I didn't know was that 6 years prior, when he was 10 years old, his mother committed suicide. So can any birthday ever be happy for this gentleman? So trauma-informed care is something that we studied, we looked at, and I took that birthday situation and I made it the reason why we created files in every program at this juvenile program so that any staff coming on to the unit could access them and see whether or not their language or what they were doing would re-trigger and re-traumatize a youngster. Again, being informed makes the difference. Now, our kids at this facility had significant behaviors that landed them there, but all traumatized youth are not in facilities. No one is immune to the impact of trauma, and we saw that moments ago in here when we raised our hand and we were just talking about the power of words. Now, imagine those words coupled with experiences and what it can do to amplify trauma. Trauma contributes to so many mental health issues, such as substance abuse and also violence. So please understand that it is the words that we use that will re-traumatize or put them on the path to healing. I go back and I look at the happy birthday situation and what I would have done differently. I wouldn't even said happy birthday to him. See, I would have used those words to facilitate the necessary changes to create a safe environment and have better outcomes. And it was what I did afterwards of going and being more educated in trauma-informed care, learning more about it, going to more trainings, where we were able, as a team, to over a 3-year period, drop our physical restraints by almost 50%. So when we're looking at trauma-informed care and we say it happened at this one facility, imagine if it happened everywhere. It is so much more effective to focus on why someone is acting out than to focus on the negative situation and the negative behavior. I sometimes wonder that when I was a youth, ironically at this same facility, if someone would have taken the time to communicate with me about what was going on with me, then maybe I wouldn't have went down the path of going to prison. If we want better outcomes, we have to be informed. But it doesn't just have to be those of us working in the juvenile justice system. See, there is a 100% chance that everyone in this room is going to encounter a traumatized youth. If you are a teacher, if you're a parent, if you are a Boy Scout leader, Girl Scout leader, mentor, healthcare provider, and of course, if you're a law enforcement agent, the chances of you encountering a traumatized youth is pretty significant. So what you have to do is sort of take this mindset. I call this the golden rule of trauma-informed care. And instead of saying what's wrong with him or her, you say to yourself, what happened to him or her? See, that was the small, significant change that we made in the facilities where we experienced tons of success. So I have one more question for you guys. How many of you would like to see changes in our community, in our youth? Raise your hand. So we have that in common too. So now that you know about the power of being informed, Now you know about the power of your words to be the change that you want to see. Thank you.